Good evening, and on behalf of St. Anne's and the Archdiocese of Atlanta, I'd like to warmly welcome each of you and thank you for making the time to come here. We know no one has time on a Thursday night, and I know you all made time to be here and made this a priority because you care, and I just really want to thank you for that. And my name is Jenny Stevens. I'm a parishioner here at St. Anne's, and this is a topic that's very dear to my heart, and I'm just glad that we had such a great turnout today. We're here to discuss a very difficult and disturbing topic: children who are being trafficked and exploited for sex right here in Metro Atlanta. Tonight, we will not only learn about this horrific problem, but we will learn something that we can do November 8th to fight it, and that is voting yes for the Safe Harbor Amendment. Before I introduce our first speaker, I'd like to start us with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, we know that you are here with us in this room tonight. We thank you for these expert leaders who are working so hard every day to fight this problem. Guide them in their brave and important work. We thank you for the headway that's already being made to swiftly punish perpetrators and protect and heal the child victims. And most of all, we thank you for calling each and every person here tonight sitting in these chairs. May we all continue to be open to your call. Amen. Now, I would like to introduce to you our first speaker, Kat Doyle. She is the Director of Justice and Peace Ministry in the Office of Life, Dignity, and Justice for the Archdiocese of Atlanta. Kat?
Thank you so much. It's great to see so many people come out to hear about this topic. So we have some speakers tonight who are going to share some of their expertise and their wisdom and their experience in working in this area and dealing with this issue. But we wanted to start by showing you a couple of videos. These are videos that you can actually go to the Archdiocese of Atlanta's website and watch. I think there are 8 or 9 of them total, but tonight we want to start with a video from Archbishop Gregory talking about how important it is that we be involved in the life of public policy and being involved in the public square. And the second video specifically has to do with sex trafficking here in Georgia. So after we watch those 2 videos, then we'll move into the speakers. So if Ed will...
Welcome. On behalf of the Catholic Bishops of Georgia, thank you for watching. We hope after seeing this, you will be better prepared to affect the common good of your community, our state, and our nation. It is important that we all apply the principles of our faith to our participation in the development of national, state, and local public policy. The Church does not support or oppose candidates or politicians for any public office. Indeed, it is clear that no political party reflects the fullness of Catholic social teaching in its entirety. We won't be telling you who to vote for. Instead, this video is intended to be a starting point, just one tool, to help Catholics prepare for the elections and, just as important, hold public officials accountable. We will explain the reflections of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops on some of the issues which we believe policymakers should morally address for the benefit of the common good. Some wonder if Catholics should participate in the creation of public policy. Participation in the creation of public policy is an important expression of our Catholic faith, as well as our right as citizens. In the Catholic tradition, participation in the political process is a moral obligation, rooted in our baptismal commitment. It is a duty for us, both as Americans and as Catholics. Voting is one way to participate in public policy. We vote because we are citizens, but we vote conscientiously because we are people of faith. It is extremely important for all citizens to see beyond party politics and to choose their political leaders according to principle, not party affiliation or mere self-interest. We are called to behave civilly and respectfully in all areas of public dialogue. Catholic social teaching grants Catholics a consistent moral framework drawn from basic human reason that is illuminated by Scripture and the teaching of the Church for assessing issues, political platforms, and campaigns. As disciples of Christ, we are called to be instruments of grace, working to defend life, pursue justice, help make God's kingdom present, and heal the brokenness of the world. As Catholics, we participate in Eucharistic mission. At Mass, we receive the body of Christ and then go out to live as Eucharist in the world. We are called to live the Eucharist, living our faith in the world, including in our political and public responsibilities. Please carefully consider how you can participate in your community by influencing public officials through your vote or through direct conversations to adopt policies that benefit all our brothers and sisters.
Archbishop sends his best wishes tonight and encourages you to share with your friends and your family and the other parishioners here the fact that this video and the next one, as well as a number of others regarding important issues in this year's election and as we go forward affecting change in the public square, are available for everyone to watch. So now we'd like to show you a short video specifically on the issue of sex trafficking. Trafficking of human beings is a clear violation of human dignity. In Georgia, human trafficking for sexual and labor purposes is an important issue. Law enforcement officials report sex trafficking in more than 102 counties in Georgia. No area is immune. While there are many things that can be done to combat this evil, voters in Georgia have a unique opportunity when they go to the polls in November. After the list of candidates, there are several constitutional amendments, but Amendment number 2 is important because it will set aside much needed funding for rehabilitation services for minors who have fallen victim to unscrupulous traffickers. These victims now want to reclaim their lives. Funding will come from an assessment of adult entertainment establishments. A vote yes for this amendment is a vote to support human dignity. So you've heard a little bit about what we're here to talk about tonight. We want to kind of let you know how tonight's going to work. There are 4 of us who will be speaking this evening, and each one of us is going to take you through an important part of this issue. We'll start with Bob, who is here with us from Street Grace, and he's going to talk a little bit about what is human trafficking, and specifically the trafficking of children for sex. Then we have Mike, who's going to talk to us about what is safe harbor. What is this amendment? Frank, and Mike is with the Safe Harbor Task Force. Frank, who's with the Catholic Conference, is going to talk to us about how did we get from the start to where we are in terms of the legislative work that's been done. And then I'm going to talk with you a little bit about, so now what? What do you do now that you've heard all of this information? So we would like to start the evening with Bob from Street Grace. And I'm going to let them tell you a little bit about themselves, because I always find that it's a little bit more what they really want you to know about them when they speak versus me reading off a long line of lists and accomplishments. Just let me assure you, these are all very accomplished gentlemen.
That was really a very hesitant applause. So that's okay. Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming out on a Thursday night to sit in a room and talk about domestic minor sex trafficking. The only thing that sounds more challenging than that is that I'm meeting with another group at 6:30 tomorrow morning to talk about domestic minor sex trafficking. So thank you for being here. You've heard our Attorney General Sam Olin say on a number of occasions, if you think about sex trafficking as this idea of someone pulling up beside someone else and throwing them in the back of a vehicle and rushing them off and taking them away, if you hear stories of someone being kidnapped, if you hear stories of runaways and all that kind of stuff, that is sex trafficking. Those are opportunities and those are vulnerable areas, but that's not usually what happens. What usually happens is the person down the street in our neighborhood, in our communities, in our cities. Sex trafficking and domestic minor sex trafficking is an everyone problem. It's not a geographical problem. It's not an economic problem. It's an everyone problem. Street Grace is an organization that was formed 8 years ago, and it was born out of the faith community, a coalition of about 80 to 100 churches coming together and saying, how do we pool our resources and respond to this issue? And so it's a result of the faith community. It's faith-born and it's faith-led. Domestic minor sex trafficking is exactly what it sounds like. It's domestic minor sex trafficking under the age of 18, and it's our children. It's our children that are born here, that are citizens here, that attend our schools. And just to give you a perspective, not to get too far off on things, but just to give you a perspective, 1 in 4 girls, by the time she's 18, will have been sexually exploited. 1 in 4. 1 in 6 boys, by the time they're 18, will have been sexually exploited. It's our problem. It's our kids. And that sexual exploitation breeds opportunities and is a fertile ground for trafficking and for vulnerability and things like that. While we slept last night, up to 250 to 400 kids in our state were raped for money. So it's our problem. Let me give you a scope of the problem. Money's obviously one of the obvious factors. The underground sex industry in Georgia, in Atlanta and in Georgia, is at least a $300 million business. It's $300 million. And what you're hearing us talk about and you're going to hear others talk about tonight is an opportunity for us to get up to $2 million to fight the problem. An average trafficker in Atlanta with 5 victims can earn $33,000 a week cash, on average. $33,000 a week cash. It's the second largest underground or illegal industry on the planet, and it's the fastest growing. Who should be involved or who is involved in domestic minor sex trafficking? 3 folks: the victims or survivors, the perpetrators, the pimps, the traffickers, and the buyers. You know, I feel like we need to get away from calling buyers Johns. That's just too friendly and it's too kind. There's really a victim and there's 2 traffickers. There's the person that sells and there's the person that buys. And fortunately, in the state that we live in, our legislator has taken that very seriously, and there are now substantial penalties, fines, and prison time associated with buying domestic victims or underage minor children. It was literally just 15 years ago that on the books, the penalty for purchasing sex and for pimping a child was a $50 fine and a misdemeanor. That's where we've come. And so it's dramatic. More than 90% of those who have been exploited or victims of DMST have been sexually abused in the past. I referenced that earlier. It creates this fertile ground for vulnerability. The average age of entry is 12 to 14 years old. That's our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. Possible warning signs. I'm not going to comment on a lot of these, and I'm not going to read them all. I'll be happy. I know we've got a question and answer earlier, but Frank and Kat have both warned me that there is a trap door up here, and at 15 minutes, I will disappear no matter where I am in the process. And so I just want to comment about a couple of things. Last week, we went through these in a presentation that we made and had a husband and wife come up afterwards and say, this is frightening because our teenage son, our 9th grade son, has been talking to us the last 4 to 6 weeks about a friend of his, a classmate, who has been falling asleep in class, behaving differently, carrying a second phone, and there are all these signs, and we didn't know what it was, and he didn't know what it was, and we didn't know who to go to. But these are the kinds of things that you want to be on the lookout for. You can see them, but to distill it down, you want to look for changes in behavior that don't make sense. You want to look for changes in online behavior that don't make sense. You want to look for people that are beginning to carry a second phone, or that are beginning to withdraw significantly, or people that are beginning to sleep through class. Again, remember the age group that we're talking about. We're talking about middle schoolers and high schoolers to a large extent. So these are things that will often be identified by teachers and administrators and peers in school and in classes. Next, who profits from DMST? The perpetrators who sell, the traffickers, and those who are involved. I mean, we've talked earlier about, and I mentioned the cash. It's all about the money. These people, these children have become nothing more than a commodity. Trafficking tactics, we've commented on some of those, but abduction by force, fraud, or coercion, terrorizing threats. Anymore, that can be social media threats with the advent of sexting and all of the things and the exposure that there are to children and the pictures that are out there that people wish that weren't out there, that get in the hands of someone that is different than who they thought that it was on the other end of the social network or on Snapchat or on Facebook or any of the things that are available to them. And then there's threats, and then people are scared and they're threatened to expose. You get it all the time. I get this question all the time as you start thinking and talking about these elements of this and how people get wrapped up in it. And that is, why don't these people get out? Why don't these girls or boys get out? Why don't these women get out? Why don't they make the decision to walk away? And the best answer that I have for that is imagine yourself on a pitch black night in the middle of the ocean, on a rickety boat that's already got some problems, and the waves are crashing all around you in a huge storm, and you fall overboard, and you just grab hold of the first thing that's floating in the water, and it keeps you afloat. And somebody, as the boat passes by and runs off, just hollers, "Swim to shore." You have no idea which direction things are. Your life is a mess. You've lost all of your bearings. You have no sense of direction, no sense of purpose, and you are absolutely overwhelmed with fear. Factors that are influencing demand: pornography, stripping, exotic dancing, adult establishments, especially those that we'll reference and that would be part of the ability to collect fees here, which would be those that combine nudity and alcohol. And then sex on demand. Case in point, Carl Farrar, who is the CEO of Backpage, which is the largest online brothel in the world. Backpage.com, hopefully you're not that familiar with it, but Backpage.com is an organization that literally can bill $3.1 million a week. They're a global enterprise based here in the are functioning fully alive here in the U.S. with their executive team here in the U.S. Carl Farrar, the CEO, was finally arrested 2 or 3 weeks ago in Texas and was put in jail. Now, who knows where that'll lead and who knows where that'll go? He's in jail. Backpage is still up, still billing $3 million a week, and 99% of their revenue, it is estimated, comes from the adult section. Everything on the Backpage is a fraud to perpetrate adult entertainment and sex trafficking. Couple of perceptions about demand that are important to note. I think people frequently and often think this is not my problem. It happens in town, it happens south of town, it happens somewhere else. If you look at the slide in front of you, 23%, on a recent study in Atlanta, 23% of the phone calls, 23% of the buyers' phone calls come from outside of the perimeter. 26% come from inside the perimeter. 42% of the phone calls to purchase sex came from outside of the perimeter. Right where we're sitting. Legislative milestones. I don't have time to go through all those, but I want to make sure you're aware that there have been passage of 8 or 10 Senate bills, Senate resolutions, House bills, and laws in the last 2 years that have dramatically changed the face. If they put teeth in the prosecutors' ability to prosecute these cases through to conviction. It's important. The Safe Harbor Amendment. The Safe Harbor Amendment tonight is the next step on the journey. It's not the end of the journey. It's the next step on the journey. So thanks for listening. Thanks for just kind of taking that in quickly, and we'll have an opportunity, I know, for questions later. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Bob, and thank you, Kat. I can't remember the last time I was called an expert at anything, actually. And there will be a little bit of repetition here, but I hope you'll understand that some points need to be driven home. So I take it we're on the first. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so commercial sexual exploitation or domestic minor sex trafficking. This is prostituting a child for sex acts by, a third party, using a child to produce pornography, erotic displays, or performances. As Bob mentioned, we refer to them as traffickers and buyers. Sometimes children are selling themselves, but this always involves the exchange of something for value. This is the second largest, fastest growing crime in the United States and worldwide. And make no mistake about it, while Atlanta is a hotbed, it is not downtown Atlanta. It's not the airport. People come through the airport, but it's happening right here in East Cobb. So children as young as 9, and they come from every sexual demographic. I know of a child who was in the orchestra, played the violin at Roswell High School, lived in a gated community. I know of another person who's a middle-aged white guy, a lot like myself, actually. While he's been out of this horrendous experience for some time, he still struggles with the guilt and the pain of what he has been through. Traffickers typically use a process, but it involves finding a child's vulnerability and exploiting it. It's really just that simple. And it could be finding someone online, trying to develop a romantic relationship, and contriving a reason for a meeting. It might be gaining control by obtaining inappropriate photographs and then threatening to use them. Or we even know of instances like Bob mentioned of kids they happen to be the ones that nobody meets at the school bus, and they have a little bit longer walk to get home, and one day they never get home. Drugs can be used in order to gain control and maintain control. And children often don't see themselves as a victim while this is going on. After all, they're children, and someone else has got control here. But no matter who they are, or where they come from, one thing is true. These are our children. Next one. So the FBI recognizes Atlanta as a major hub, but last year the GBI investigated over 3,800 cases of domestic minor sex trafficking in 102 counties around Georgia, as you can see from this slide. And it was probably more counties than that, because some of the more rural sheriffs and police departments don't really recognize what they're dealing with because they haven't had the same level of training. But we do know that over 60% of the counties and much more of the population has been directly affected by this. I guarantee you there are families, individuals in St. Anne's who have been directly impacted by this horror. Most victims are native Georgians, U.S. citizens. Some are from the minority community, but many are from middle-class families. Nearly every day in Georgia, another child becomes engaged in this problem. They get sold hundreds of times, multiple times, earning traffickers $1.5 million a year on average. $1.5 million. Attorney General Sam Olens and GBI Director Vernon Keenan have made bringing offenders to justice a priority. But there's no reliable funding source, no reliable method of providing for the rehabilitation and restoration of these children. And you, the voters, have a one-time opportunity to change that by voting yes on Amendment 2. Now, we've been told, well, why don't other agencies handle this? Well, DFACS and Child Protective Services, they're not set up for this. This is a very complex issue. Lots of times children can't go back to their homes. Sometimes the trafficking originates from family members, or there's a broken situation there that caused them to go onto the street. You know, when a child runs away, within 48 hours, they will be approached by a trafficker. And the signs of exploitation, they're often pretty subtle. You have to be aware of changes in behavior. A child who suddenly has money and clothes that they might not have had before. Yeah, 2 cell phones, that's one possibility, of one giveaway. Changes in behavior. But those that have been actually taken out of their day-to-day routine, they're often invisible because they're being moved around, or they may be imprisoned, basically, in one location, and that's where the activity takes place. And I won't take you through each one of these individually, but just to say generally, children who get involved in this have about a 7-year life expectancy unless they're rescued. And they have a lot of issues that they have to contend with if they are rescued. Some children may be pregnant. Sexually transmitted disease is very common. Sometimes the method of control involves physical abuse. In fact, it's more than sometimes. And so these things require corrective surgery. And they're behind in school, so they need help getting back on track. But most of all, at least most of all to me, they've got to have help understanding that they have a place in society and that they have a chance to fulfill it. A society that has let them down and that they've learned that they can't trust. But if they get rescued, the prospects for recovery are good. 80% of victims go on to lead healthy and productive lives if they get the kind of restoration and treatment that they need. It's variously estimated that it costs about $80,000 a year to rehabilitate a child. And there are very few of these type of services available. Right now, there are only 2 organizations in Georgia that provide the kind of inpatient care that this really requires. So what we want to do is make Georgia a safe harbor for these children. A safe harbor is a legal term, but in this instance, let's just say that this is a place, an opportunity, a way for these children to be rescued out of this nightmare and be made whole again. Since 2011, Georgia law has recognized that these are victims, they're not criminals. And so they don't face charges if they're involved in breaking up one of these rings. So Amendment 2 will amend Georgia's Constitution to create a permanent fund to restore these children. This is going to be funded by a tax, yes, a tax, on adult entertainment establishments, strip clubs, and also fines levied on convicted traffickers. It's estimated that these 2 sources will provide $2 million initially, annually, that will then be divided up amongst these agencies that apply for it. But this is a statewide referendum. It required a constitutional amendment to be able to set up a dedicated fund. Now, this was passed overwhelmingly by the legislature, but in order for it to be enacted, we have to get a majority vote on November 8th. And the next slide is the verbiage of the amendment. Trust me, when you get to Amendment 2, just vote yes. You don't have to read it again. And of course, we had overwhelming support. There's no question about that. So how will the fund be spent? There'll be a commission set up of 7 people. There's a mechanism for appointing those folks, and they will establish a set of guidelines for faith-based organizations and nonprofits so they can apply for grants that they can then use to treat these children. And the commission will disperse the funds accordingly. So I'm a member of the steering committee for Safe Harbor Yes. We're a broad coalition of volunteers and sponsors who are putting together a grassroots effort to pass this legislation. And I'm often asked, well, I would have liked it if the bill was structured this way, or do we really need a new tax, or $2 million doesn't sound like a whole lot of money, especially for something like this. Well, whatever you might quibble over, all I can say is we could all probably think of a way that something could be done a little bit better. But the last thing we can do now is let perfect become the enemy of good. And I can guarantee you that if, for some reason, this amendment doesn't pass, the legislators are not going to go back and try to figure out, well, maybe they didn't like the funding mechanism, or maybe they didn't think it was enough money, or maybe this, or maybe that. What they're going to do is say, the people of Georgia don't think this is important. And they'll move on to something else. And the children will be the victims one more time. So join us to vote yes for the Safe Harbor Amendment, Amendment number 2. Tell everyone you know. You're 2 behind now. That's all right. This is where the commercial comes in. So go to www.safeharbouryes.com. Sign up. We'll send you updates. We'll remind you to vote, courteously, of course. And there's other information there that you can get on this issue, okay? I know that it's a lot to digest. And in closing, I think we are often presented with situations where you have to look at things and say, well, is the glass half empty or is the glass half full? And I'm reminded of a quote by Sir Winston Churchill, who said, "I'm an optimist because it doesn't make any sense to be anything else." I believe there's reason for optimism here. You know, while most of us weren't looking, most of us didn't even know this was an issue, the penalties for trafficking were made tougher. We stopped penalizing the victims. But there's more to be done. Yes, the glass is half full. But on November 8th, sorry, we need to fill it up. So join me in voting yes on Amendment 2 on November 8th, because these are our children. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much. We have a lot that we're giving to you this morning, or this evening, and appreciate your being here. I am Frank Mulcahy. I am Executive Director of the Georgia Catholic Conference. What the Georgia Catholic Conference is, it is the organization of the three bishops in office in Georgia: Archbishop Gregory, Bishop Zarama, his auxiliary, and Bishop Gregory Hartmeyer, the Bishop of Savannah. And it is my privilege to represent them in areas of public policy. It's our goal, and the instructions I have from the bishops are to represent things that are good for the common good. You know, Catholic social teaching tells us that we are to seek the common good, and so we look at legislation, a variety of legislation, and look for those things which we think are important and which are consistent with our values. Bob mentioned, and Mike just mentioned too, some of the steps we have gone through in legislation related to sex trafficking. And I should say, I just reiterate one thing that our Archbishop Gregory said in the video, is we do not support any candidate or any political party. We are totally issue-oriented. We look at the issues in light of Catholic social teaching and support them on that basis, without regard to whichever party may support them or not. This issue is a bipartisan issue, passed by very large majorities in the House, the State House and Senate, and with support from both of the political parties. I've been involved in these various steps of legislation, going back from when Bob mentioned that pimping was a misdemeanor with a $50 fine. You pay more than that on a speeding ticket. We have worked over the years, and these are things that have to be done step by step by step. We have worked over the years with legislators to increase the fines, to increase the prison terms, particularly with regard to trafficking of children. You would think this ought to be a whole lot easier than it is, but it's taken a lot of education for legislators to understand the seriousness of this crime, and that it is going on in our state. Now, excuse me, we've been very fortunate in, in having support from many of our state leaders who have come to know this issue. Sam Olens, who, as you probably know, just resigned as Attorney General to become president of Kennesaw State University. But General Olens was very supportive of this, and he leaves behind in the Attorney General's office a very active prosecuting section. Just to go through a couple of the legal steps, there are two pieces of legislation involved in this. There is the constitutional amendment, which, as Bob and Mike mentioned, we are going to be able to vote on. We call it the Second Amendment. As you go through your ballot, you'll see various candidates. You can vote for anybody you want. Go through those candidates. At the end, there are 4 constitutional questions. The second one is this one, safe harbor yes. You can look in there and see the word safe harbor in there, but it's the Second Amendment, and we, on behalf of the church, can support issues. We can support a ballot initiative, which does good. As I said, it doesn't affect either party. On this issue, both parties are in agreement that this will be a helpful piece of legislation. The second thing is a piece of legislation, enacted legislation, which implements the kind of broad constitutional requirement to set up this fund. And that's where we find how it's going to be funded, how the commission will be set up, and then how this money will be used. And it will be used for the benefit of these victims. I think it's a particularly appropriate place for us to be voting in the Catholic Church. Pope Francis has designated this the Year of Mercy. And if there's anybody who needs mercy, it's some of these children who have been caught in trafficking and need our mercy, our compassion, and our help so that they can regain productive lives. The legislation is important in setting out how this will work. But you ask, why does this need to have a constitutional amendment? I've worked at the Georgia General Assembly for 30 years in different capacities, not always for the church, and I have seen how they work. And one of the key things is the budget, the money. And there are thousands of people looking for pieces of this budget, some of whom are very well financed in order to get pieces of this budget. Kids don't have very good lobbyists, particularly kids who have become victims of traffickers. Unfortunately, if this money just gets hopefully out there, there's not going to be a whole lot left for the kids. This amendment sets up a constitutional lockbox, if you will. The money that comes from the sources that Mike mentioned, from the adult entertainment establishments and from the court assessments, goes in this lockbox, and it can't be used for anything else. You say, well, they could just specify that. Next time you buy tires, look down all the little fees. They go, you got the tires, but look at all the fees and taxes. You'll see a $1 per tire fee for recycling your tires. And you say, well, that's a good idea. Well, that's a great idea, except that's not where the money actually goes. The General Assembly can divert that money and does divert that money to other projects. That's what we're trying to prevent here with setting up this constitutional amendment that helps kids. Now, there's no reason why the General Assembly could not put more money in. We're estimating that these assessments will come up with about $2 million. Probably not enough money, but the commission can go out to other organizations, other nonprofits, and raise other money, or get other money from the General Assembly. But this sets up the lockbox and sets up the project going. See if there's anything else that needs to be mentioned. I think that's really all that I need to say on it. We will be here for some time if you have questions on it. But I do ask that in the year of mercy, you consider a favorable vote for this legislation, which helps kids. Thank you very much.
That's fine. So y'all have learned a lot, right? It's a lot of information that we threw at you tonight. As you're going through this, let me kind of consolidate a few points for you to take home tonight. First of all, these are our children. These are not materials. These are not objects. These are our children. And as Frank said, children really are the ones that have the least amount of lobbying power. So we have to be that power for them. So first and foremost, remember that when you're voting on this particular amendment, you're voting yes because you want to do something to protect the human dignity of these children. The second thing that I'd like you to consider when you go home tonight is this. We need to pass this. We need to show that as Georgians, in general, this is something we want. But it's not a matter of the majority gets the pass. So winning this amendment, passing this amendment 51 to 49 is not enough. And here's why. We feel pretty confident that while the adult entertainment industry has certainly been in the wings and watched this constitutional amendment and all of the legislative paperwork that goes with it grow and become what it is, they have not stepped forward and made any kind of a big deal about the fact that they are going to be receiving an assessment. We feel pretty strongly that when, and I believe when, not if, when this amendment passes, they are going to step up. And they're going to claim things such as that you are targeting a specific industry, and you can't do that. That's unconstitutional. The good news is that Texas had this same type of issue come up, and based on the facts that they were able to actually tie the adult entertainment industry to indirect and sometimes direct, but at least indirectly to human trafficking and sex trafficking of children, the constitutionality of this held in Texas, and we absolutely believe that it will hold here in Georgia. But because we know that they are looking at and they're ready to stand up and take exception to this, we need to pass this by a huge majority. When this does get into a legal battle, the higher the majority, if we can pass this 80%, it's really easy for our legal representatives to stand up and say, Georgia wanted this. Not just a little, Georgia undeniably wanted this to happen, and that goes a long way when we're fighting this in a court. So remember this, we need it to not just pass, we need it to pass big. So we need everybody out there voting. We feel today Senator Renee Unterman held a press conference, and she felt very strongly that this is going to pass. But what she really was pushing for is it needs to pass big, get out, get the word out, let people know. And the third thing I ask you to do when you leave tonight is consider this something that comes as a part of you living your faith. This is a part of Catholic social teaching. This is a part of who we are as people of faith. We cannot ignore the human dignity of these people who, It's slavery. It's the buying and selling of people. And to make it even worse, for sex. And to make it even worse, these are children. And our faith calls us to stand up for those who live on the margins, who are vulnerable. And I ask you to do that and to think about that and to be reminded that as people of faith, we cannot sit and wait. We have to step up and do. We have to take action. Pope Francis reminds us that it's not about sitting in the church for that 1 hour each week. It's about taking church out to the streets and the people. So that's what we do when we vote yes for this amendment. A couple of things that also come to this is, so you've heard all this. You're all going to A, go vote. B, go home and tell everybody you know about this and encourage them to vote yes. I actually got when we were downtown at the Capitol today for the press conference, I got a text message from a friend of mine that I happened to run into. We were waiting to have breakfast on Sunday morning, and I was telling him about this amendment, and I said, you have to vote yes. And he texted me this morning, and he said, that Second Amendment, the safe harbor thing, that's yes, right? And I texted back, yes, it is. But I thought, wow, that was just a little conversation in passing each other at Cracker Barrel that came about. So you have a lot of power within your sphere of influence to do something to make this happen. So you're going to go talk to all your friends. I think it's interesting that while we're having this discussion, our Jewish community friends are having something just like this weekend. Our friends within multiple faith communities are doing exactly what we're doing, gathering together to learn about this. Not only is this a bipartisan issue, this is an interfaith issue. Every one of our mainstream faiths call us to make sure that we are caring for these children, these poor and vulnerable children. As we go into this and we look at this, so we vote, we tell all our friends to vote, they vote, but that isn't the end. There's so much work to be done. You've heard about the 15 years it took to get where we are. You've heard Senator Unterman talks a lot about when she first came into the Senate and she walked in there and she said she wanted to bring up this issue of sex trafficking, and she was told, you're not going to talk about sex on the Senate floor. And she said, watch me. And that's why we are where we are today. That she had the courage to stand up and say, this is a problem, and we as the legislators of this state need to do something about it. And the legislators took a little doing, and over the last 10 years, we've had more than 50% turnover of our legislators. So that's been a big job to make sure that the new people coming in understand what this is, and the fact that it passed so overwhelmingly. The fact that our lieutenant governor and our governor and first lady have been absolutely behind this from the beginning. This goes a long way in saying Georgia wants this, and this is something that we need to do. As we get through the voting cycle and all of this, there's going to be, Frank talked to you about, there could be times when they may want to look at who else might they ask to step in and help do this. There are going to be multiple opportunities for you to continue to advocate on behalf of these children, these victims, these survivors. And one of the great things is right here in your own parish, you have a group that's getting involved in this and wants to work with one of the organizations that works in the rehabilitative process with these survivors. So as I finish up, I am going to let Jenny talk to you about what you're doing here, but I want to go through a couple of things to finish up. So you're going to vote. You're going to talk about this. You're going to continue to stay up to date on what's going on. And when we say we need you to send a postcard, we need you to make a phone call or send an email, y'all are going to step up and take on that challenge and be brave and do what needs to be done so that someday we don't have to worry about these children and what's happening to it because we will have eradicated this issue. Lastly, I ask you to pray. As I've heard a lot of people say to me, Kat, I just can't vote this year. It's a mess, and I don't like who I have to choose from. And the first thing I tell them is it's more than just a presidential vote. There are lots of other things. But if you do nothing else, show up to vote yes on amendment number 2, the Safe Harbor Amendment. It's at the end of the ballot, and I also know a lot of people that go through, hit the ones they know, and if they don't know anything about the amendments, they'll leave them blank. Don't do that. Don't let this thing not happen because we were a little lazy and didn't want to go to the end of the ballot or didn't care enough to make sure we knew which one to vote yes for. And I say to them when they say, I don't think I'm going to vote, I said, I wish you would reconsider that choice. Because as people of faith, Archbishop told us, we have an obligation to be involved in society and making sure that the common good is being held up and making sure that it's available for all, that there's never anybody that those common decency and dignity things are withheld from. So as we finish up and all, remember, if nothing else, prayer. The power of prayer, praying that our government officials will take this money and use it wisely, that people will be generous in donating to this. Prayer for those poor children, that they are rescued. Prayer for the families that these children have come from, whether they're broken, whether these are runaways and the parents are worried to death because they don't know where the children are, or whether they came from no real home at all. Pray that these children find a place. 80% of them, we know 80% of the children who are rescued, in the end, come back and are able to live an absolutely productive and loving life. So keep all of this in your prayers. We thank you very much. We're going to let Jenny talk, and then we're going to be here for maybe, after you talk, maybe 15 minutes or so of Q&A. So we're going to let you talk about what's going on here, and then we'll allow you to ask some questions. How's that? Thank you.
It's actually going to be me.
Oh, okay.
Wow. My name is Christy David, and I'm a parishioner here at St. Anne's. I've been a parishioner for, I guess, close to 20 years. It's a wonderful home we have here. At the beginning of 2016 is really when I started learning more about this, and all of a sudden I felt the Holy Spirit work inside of me as something that this is something I can't ignore. And my dear friend Jenny, who you met earlier today, we both have daughters that fall in that are middle schoolers, that are right in this age where this could happen to them. But since learning about this at the beginning of the year through now and learning the different players in this and the organizations that help and the legislature, I mean, it is so horrible and my heart has gotten so heavy. But coming in here tonight and seeing everyone that took an hour and a half out of their Thursday night to come and listen and learn more about this, it just gives me hope. And I thank every one of you so much for coming tonight. And I wanted to thank my new best friends, Bob and Mike, our expert speakers. They were wonderful. And to Kat and Frank from the Archdiocese, thank you very much. And for all the people that helped get this on here at St. Anne's tonight. Now, this is really kicking off, tonight really kicks off what we're trying to start here at St. Anne's. And we have decided to call it FACTS, Fighting to Abolish Child Trafficking for Sex. And what our goal is through FACTS is kind of threefold. We'd like to create awareness. We'd like to start the dialogue. So many people, as we've talked about before, don't talk about it. It's terrible and gross and disgusting to talk about. But just doing what we're doing here tonight and educating people and letting them know about the problem, and it's closer than we'd like to think it is, that's part of what we'd like to do. The second part is to do, Jenny and I went down to Lobby Day at the Capitol this February and really helped and learned and went into our representative's office to ask them to vote for this and to bring it to fruition. And so we'd like to help make changes in our government and make stricter penalties and do things like safe harbor and to be a part of that. And then thirdly, the most important part is these victims. And we like to support their rehabilitation and their recovery in whatever way we can. And Jenny and I have gone through all this year, like I said, learning the different players, learning who we'd like to partner with, learning how we can make a difference as the wonderful parish community that we have here at St. Anne's. So, having said that, we are going to be at the red table in the back. If you haven't signed up yet and you would like to become a part of this, please write your name down, write your email address. As we start getting things going, we'll reach out to you and let you know what opportunities we're going to have going forward.